Chiefs Kingdom, bit of a quiet day two for the Kansas City Chiefs in free agency, really for the entire league. But we're still here on the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports to break down what did happen related to the Kansas City Chiefs, some departures, some players that exited the team that we'll discuss. We're going to hit a cap update, and then we're going to talk about some potential targets for day three of free agency that the Chiefs could go out and sign. But before we get into it, if you want the Kansas City Chiefs to make some more moves tomorrow, if you want tomorrow to be a little bit more exciting than today was, because nothing today, in my opinion, then like today's video. Let me know where you stand on how aggressive you want the Chiefs to be, how exciting you want this offseason to be, because I want a little juice. I want something to happen tomorrow. So I'm going to be hitting that like button because that's what I want to see. So let me know what you want to see tomorrow by liking today's video. But let's get a little run of show. So we're going to start with the departures that have happened so far. We had another notable one happen this morning, another notable player that signed away from the Kansas City Chiefs. We're only going to talk about guys who've already signed deals. If they haven't signed a deal yet, they're not technically a departure in my book. There's still a chance that they could ultimately come back. Once we get through that, we're going to talk about the cap space as it stands right now, where the Kansas City Chiefs are in terms of their total cap after a couple deals yesterday for Loie Gilman and also for Kyrus Tonga and Kenneth Walker, all the signings that they made. We got to figure out where they stand since we've gotten some more details on those contracts. And then lastly, we're going to talk about targets for day three, a couple guys that the Kansas City Chiefs could potentially look at signing. But let's get started with the notable exits, the departures that have happened so far. And the one that happened this morning, Isiah Pacheco, Pop, is officially out the door. This one, I mean, the writing was on the wall. Like, it's not a big surprise at this point. Even before the offseason really began, even before we came into the free agency window and we got Kenneth Walker, it was pretty clear that somebody else was going to be taking over the Kansas City Chiefs backfield in 2026. Whether it was Ken Walker, Travis Etienne, Jeremiah Love, all the options that we talked about, Isiah Pacheco wasn't on that list. And we all know why. At the end of the day, he had begun to decline. He wasn't the guy that he was early on in his career, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a great contributor to the Kansas City Chiefs during his time in Kansas City. A huge part of the reason why that team was able to win back-to-back Super Bowls. His rookie season was unbelievable. I think we should all send a thank you to Pop in the comment section. So say thank you, Pop, in the comment section by commenting Pop today. Let's move on to Jaylen Watson, our second departure. He gets a big money deal with the Los Angeles Rams, one of three secondary players to leave. We'll get into the other one in a minute here, outside of Trent McDuffie, who we've obviously talked about at length in that trade. But Watson also heading to Los Angeles. Two of our corners both ending up with the Los Angeles Rams. And this one was interesting to me because I had told you guys, because this is what I thought, that Watson was probably coming back. I thought that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to make a strong push to retain Jaylen Watson. And at the $17.5 million price tag, it was something that they could have done. But what we talked about last night in our video recapping day two is that it seems pretty clear at this point the Kansas City Chiefs have decided their investment is not going to be in positions like defensive back or secondary in general. They are investing hard into the defensive line and protection and weapons for Patrick Mahomes. That is the two main points of investment for this Kansas City Chiefs team outside of Patrick Mahomes himself. And they've made it clear they're willing to rely on young players and go cheap at pretty much every other spot. And that brings us to Bryan Cook, another example of that same strategy. He gets a solid deal with the Bengals. I think it was 3-year, $40.2 million contract. Could the Chiefs have made that work with Bryan Cook? Absolutely, but it would have been at the cost of their ability to go out and make some other things happen, like maybe retaining Travis Kelce or some of the day three targets we're going to talk about in a minute. Last departure, Josh Williams is out the door as well. He actually got a surprisingly strong deal in Tennessee, a little bit more money than I expected. And it does kind of make sense that he would wind up in Tennessee, given the connection to Mike Borgonzi, who spent a lot of time in Kansas City with around when Josh Williams was there, so it does make sense that Williams lands with the Titans. But we're going to get into some day 3 targets for the Kansas City Chiefs here in just 1 minute. But before we do, let's hear from Polymarket. Before we continue on with the video, here's what I'm looking to trade on Polymarket. For this game, Polymarket is giving Boston just a 42% chance to win against San Antonio, which is wild to me. The value there is just way too good. The Celtics have been one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference this season without Jason Tatum, and with him coming back, I know they have a great chance to win against the Spurs. For those reasons, I'm taking Boston at 42% to win this game. 100 winning me 238 if Boston takes the dub. Plus, with Polymarket, you can trade in and out on momentum shifts without getting blocked or penalized. With in-game trading, once the Celtics get up, I could either ride it all the way out or I could sell early. For example, if you buy at 42% and sell at just 75%, you can snag a cool $179 payout. I'm keeping an eye on a first half run. If the Celtics get up early and get off to a hot start, they'll give me a good opportunity to sell. You can't do this with a traditional sports book, so get started today. Polymarket is legal in all 50 states. Download the app now to get to the top of the wait list. The only way to do that is by clicking my link in the description and comments. Cool. So the cap as of right now stands at $9 to $10 million, in my opinion. And the reason we don't know the exact numbers at this point is because we still don't have the exact details on Kenneth Walker's contract. We got the exact details on Kyrus Tonga's deal, but Ken Walker's deal and Alohi Gilman's deal as well, I should add in. Plus Tyquan Thornton's re-signing, all of those we don't have contract details on just yet. But if you gauge off of what they got, you go with their average annuals, and there will be a little bit of restructuring there that might move some money back down. They might have smaller cap hits in the first year, bigger cap hits in the second year, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, it's not always the same amount of money in every single season that comes to these guys or on your books as a cap hit. So it's a little bit tough to know until we get the full details when those are out and the deals are official. But as of right now, keep 9 to 10 million in your back pocket as the rough estimate of where the Kansas City Chiefs are. It might be a few million lower. It might be a few million higher. Again, details are tricky to have at this point, but 9 to 10 million feels like a good ballpark for where the Kansas City Chiefs likely are. And it's also good to remember that they can create a lot more cap space. We've talked about this a lot. Brett Veach has talked about this. If you go back to our combine discussions, when we talked about Brett Veach's combine interview, when he spoke to the media, pretty much the last time he spoke openly to the media, if I really think about it, he talked about $60 million that could be created in restructures. And there is the opportunity to do that. There's even more that you can restructure up to. But there are 3 notable ones that I think the Kansas City Chiefs will really go after hard, or potentially could go after hard, I guess, are Chris Jones, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey. And we've talked about all 3 of these before, and my stance has not changed on all 3 of them. Do not touch Chris Jones's deal. That $22.5 million may look tempting, but it will screw you down the line if you move that money. It would be a mistake. And based off the run that Brett Veach is on right now, I don't expect him to do it. I think he is so locked in right now, guys. I've been giving him so many props lately for what he's doing. If he made that move, it would be massively out of character for the great run that he is on. I do think it's highly likely, though, that he will restructure Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey to get over $20 million in cap space that way, allowing him to do something like re-sign Leo Chenal. Bringing back Leo Chenal absolutely should be a priority. I've said this before. I don't want to see this guy play for another team and have them be the ones to unlock his talent, because we see it in flashes. We see it over and over again. And I do think Nick Bolton needs more competition. And the linebacker market is as low as it has ever been. He is not going to get a significant payday. Devin Lloyd, the best inside linebacker on the market, just got $15 million a year. Leo Chenal could be had for at most $8 million a year. And even that, I think, would be a lot. I think he's looking realistically at the $5 to $6 million annual range. And that is money that the Chiefs should be ready to pony up to keep him around. They need a linebacker like this. He is a member of this team that absolutely should stay. And if you agree with me, I want you to drop a like on today's video. If you want Leo Chenal back in 2026 on this team, like today's video. Send the message. Get this video out to more Chiefs fans and out, hopefully, to Brett Veach and some decision makers for the Kansas City Chiefs so that they see how much the kingdom wants Leo back and that they make it happen. But, again, we've talked about this. To do this, you're going to need to move the money on Smith and Humphrey. Because I don't want Leo to be the only thing that the Kansas City Chiefs do over the next couple of days. We're about to talk about a laundry list of guys that I think the Kansas City Chiefs could go after. And obviously, they won't be able to sign all of them, but you won't be able to sign any of them if you get Leo and don't restructure Trey and Creed. So restructuring those two guys is absolutely something that the Kansas City Chiefs need to do. It is something I think they will do, and make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on so you don't miss it when it does happen. Let's get into some guys that the Chiefs might target with the money that they save from these restructures. Trey Hendrickson is still on the market, my friends. He is still available. Heading almost into day 3. And again, this is all of these worth noting here. If you're watching this video on like Thursday and you're like, hey, Trey Hendrickson just signed with the New Orleans Saints. I'm sorry. We're filming on Tuesday at almost 6 p.m. Things can change very, very rapidly in NFL free agency. So just keep that in the back of your mind. This is as of Tuesday at just before 6 p.m. Trey Hendrickson still available. I think that deal is something that's very interesting at this point, though. We've seen some edges get some big-time money. Can the Kansas City Chiefs really afford Trey Hendrickson? I think it's going to be questionable at this point based off of Dafe Owe getting $25 million. Who else? Boye Mafe got $20 million with the Commanders. A lot of money being thrown at a lot of different edge defenders. Jalen Phillips got a huge bag in Carolina. Trey Hendrickson's definitely looking for some money. That's why he hasn't signed yet. So it'll be interesting to see if the Kansas City Chiefs are able to create enough cap to make something like that happen. But he's far from the only edge option, and we'll talk about a couple others on today's show as well. Rasheed Walker is someone to keep in the back of your mind, as are a number of offensive tackles. He's the only one that I've got on this list, but I think it's interesting because the Kansas City Chiefs are not a team that on paper has a massive need at offensive tackle, but we just keep hearing smoke around them being connected to different guys. Rasheed Walker, one of the biggest ones. So it will be interesting to see if he is ultimately somebody that the Kansas City Chiefs go after, or if they go after any other offensive tackles, because then that starts a whole other conversation about why exactly they feel the need to do that. Is that just that they want great depth at the position? Is that they don't feel good about Jalen Moore as a starter? Is Josh Simmons a point of concern? We'll have that conversation if that comes up, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind because smoke is smoking there, my friends. It absolutely is. We can't ignore it. Jauan Jennings, also someone to keep in the back of your mind. The receiver from the San Francisco 49ers is coming off of a one-year deal, bit of a down year in production. Injuries a factor there. He could be had, I think, for solid money. You're not going to get him too cheap, but he would present a really interesting receiving option for Patrick Mahomes here. Someone who's been good, been able to step up in rooms that have dealt with injuries, as our room has over the last couple of seasons. He's been used to situations like that. I think he could be a step-up option for Patrick Mahomes. We've got breaking news live on the show. Shout out to producer Parker for putting this together for us. But Leo Chenal has just signed with the Washington Commanders. We were just having a conversation about him coming back to Kansas City, about that being something that I wanted to see happen for this Chiefs team. And instead, he ends up landing in Washington. Going to go play for Dan Quinn and that defense. That is a huge bummer for Kansas City at the end of the day. Makes you less deep in the linebacker room, a position group that was already not great for this team in terms of depth, in my opinion. Leo out the door here to the Washington Commanders. Do we have details on that deal, Parker? Parker's looking for details on that deal right now, but I mean, this sucks. 58 tackles from this guy in 2025, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. He was really solid for us. And he didn't even play full time. I really think that he could have been somebody that developed more in 2026 if they were able to bring him around, that could have played more snaps for this team in 2026. He's such a solid player. I really hate to see him go out the door here to Washington. I think this is a big miss for the Chiefs. One of the first losses in free agency where I'm actually pretty bummed to see that guy head out the door. I think the rest of the departures for the Kansas City Chiefs so far, and you guys can sound off on this if you disagree in the comments, have been departures that we expected, departures that I am okay with having because the Kansas City Chiefs are in a position with the cap that's already committed to guys on the roster that they have to make tough decisions sometimes. But Leo could have stayed. I'm really interested to see how much money he ultimately got in Washington because I don't think it would have been out. And here it is. We have Chenal's new contract right here from producer Parker, who, might I say, is doing a fantastic job of responding on the fly right now to some breaking news. 3 years, $24.5 million for Leo. That's going to average out via Jordan Schultz. Thank you. We got to give our credit where credit is due there. That's a little over $8 million. So that is what I just told you guys was towards the top end of Leo's market. He does get the top end of his market. Good for Leo, good for this guy going to get his bag. If the Chiefs weren't willing to throw that at him, I do understand if he really was demanding that top end of that market money at $8 million, which I just told you guys was about the ceiling that he could have gotten. I guess that makes a little more sense for why he ultimately gets out the door in Kansas City, but I still think that's a miss. I think he's worth this kind of money. I think this is a great signing for the Washington Commanders and one that I wish I could be telling you guys the Kansas City Chiefs just made. Big miss as Leo Chenal heads out the door. Some breaking news for you guys on this episode of the Chiefs Report. But let's get right back into our still available list of free agents, which hopefully won't change with any more breaking news. Stefon Diggs is technically still available. He was just released by the New England Patriots. It'll be interesting to see what his market looks like over the next couple weeks. I've heard him connected to Tennessee pretty heavily. He's also got some ongoing legal situations that complicate things as well. But like Jauan Jennings, another solid receiving option. He was very productive for Drake May in New England this season. I feel like they found a way to use him very well. Obviously, an aging guy, someone who continues to get older and has dealt with injuries in his career. Couple ACL tears, if I remember correctly. So a lot to factor in with Stefon Diggs, but a lot of that I think could bring his contract value down. So as that off the field stuff starts to settle out, I expect to see him get some more interest from teams. I think teams are going to wait and see where a lot of that goes, but somebody to keep in the back of your mind over the next couple of weeks, as is Joey Bosa. He was a late signing last season as well. Last offseason with the Buffalo Bills, one of the later pickups, but somebody I think could be a really interesting option to upgrade along the edge for the Chiefs. We've talked about over and over again how the pass rush needs to get better. I think they're going to go out and sign an edge. Obviously, they made the move to bring in Kyrus Tonga in the interior of the defensive line, but the edge still needs upgrades. George Karlaftis didn't get it done last season. That's the reality of it. Chris Jones is not the player he once was in the interior, just game-wrecking things. We need more guys who are confident and capable of getting after the passer. Joey Bosa has made a great career of doing that, was healthy last year in Buffalo and very productive for them. We could absolutely go out and get him, I think, for maybe $12 million on a one-year contract. Jadeveon Clowney would be even cheaper. Obviously, he is far from the player that he once was, didn't even really quite live up to the expectations of his career, one of the greatest college prospects of all time in a lot of people's eyes. But Clowney remains a solid pass rusher. The pressure numbers with him annually are always solid. He's capable of getting after the passer more and more situationally at this point in his career, but another interesting option and would be very cheap, in my opinion, at least as far as edge rushers go. Also quite cheap and seemingly heading out of New Orleans, a future Hall of Famer, Cameron Jordan. Does not appear that he will return to the New Orleans Saints. I know there's been some reports that he is headed out in free agency to look at other options. Could Kansas City be one for him? Absolutely. I think if you miss out on a guy like Joey Bosa, which should be the top option for edges, that I think at least is realistic. I think Trey Hendrickson is just going to be too expensive at the end of the day. I think you end up, if you miss on Joey Bosa, Cameron Jordan is a great fallback option. And lastly, one more receiver here for you, Darnell Mooney, getting out of Atlanta this season. Could be an interesting option for us to upgrade. I think it'd be very cheap at this point. He really needs to kind of get his career back on track after a solid start in Chicago and then a bit of a disappointing run in Atlanta where he got some solid money. But I want to hear from you guys. Of the list of guys that we just talked about, or of just all the available free agents right now, let me know who you want in the comments. Let us know. Sound off for me. A wild episode of the Chiefs Report today. We had some breaking news that we responded to. Got Leo Chenal signed by the Washington Commanders. A bummer, a loss for this Kansas City Chiefs team that they will then have to address and replace it inside linebacker. That's something we'll be talking about over the next couple of days. Some potential targets at that position, which would have been on this list of guys that we just talked about if we knew that that was going to happen. But we'll be getting after that over the next couple of hours. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are locked in, and we will see you then.